Hello everybody and welcome back to another one of those videos where I talk about the future of the Fortress posts that Tarn Adams does on the first of every month. These are a little Q&A session that happened on the Bay 12 forums. I will be reading through and covering all of the different questions that I find interesting. If you would like to take part in these conversations yourself, there is a link in the description to the forum posts where you can go and take part. But until then, let's get started. The first question comes in from Mr_Crabman about Legends mode tabs, and they say, by tabs, are you referring to, 1, the changing and display structure of individual pages, like, say, having relationships this figure has be separate tab to the things this figure has done in their life, or 2, a web browser like situation where one can handle multiple pages open at once, like having Eurysmic example in one tab and Aban McDwarf guy in another, and the Kingdom of Monarchy in another, and the Scroll of Lazy Name examples as yet another one, and so on. And Tarn's response is, yeah, this is a browser type situation. I haven't reorganized individual pages. The next question comes in from Dick Butt DeGrat, and they say, are there any plans to update the game files as so to provide additional wings for creatures who naturally already possess 4? And do you have any plans at this time for issuing a formal televised and tear-filled apology to the poor user who requested the damselfly and was eventually shortchanged? And Tarn's response says, no specific plans, though it would be good if the flies were correct. These aren't the only problems, as I recollect, and generally we didn't have time to do much in any way with the top outside of the top sponsored animals, mainly bees. The next question comes in from Doomsday Weapon, and their first question is, the transition between Z levels and ramps still look kind of jarring to me. Are there any plans to add graphics and or shadows to distinguish the levels from one another? And Tarn's response is, there are wall shadows and ramps shading, though in a jumble of ramps and open spaces at various levels, it can still be confusing. I'm not sure what more we'll be able to do graphically, since we can't allow free rotation, which is where that confusion is normally tackled. We are pondering having a more abstract overlay to cut through the confusion that could be turned on. The second question from Doomsday Weapon is, looking at the new workshop design, I'm curious, are they single graphics or are they compositions? So if I change the graphics for the lever, would it also change the lever on the mechanics workshop and so on? Tarn's response says they are separate images. And of course, the third question from Doomsday Weapon is, I have to know, will bars, grates, and glass be see-through? If so, we could see what's below? And Tarn's response says, theoretically, this can be done, though it might be too expensive to quarry the floor material on the display pass. For bars and grates, it is easier. You can see through the open hatches currently. The next question comes in from Uthamir, I'm not sure how to say that, and they say, in the Steam and Classic versions, when a tile contains multiple creatures and items, will they still cycle or flash to show the presence as they currently do? I hope so! Exclamation point. And Tarn's response is, I believe it works the same way. That is, it flips between creatures, not items. Though we haven't drawn up a replacement for the pipe, I think is what that is, / yet. The next question comes in from Tranquil River Giant, and they say, currently in adventure mode, the game performance struggles in human cities. The many characters in the area cause the game to lag, making it hard to play. However, there are lots of cool features in the game located in cities, such as taverns, catacombs, and dungeons. Will the city performance be optimized by the Steam release? And Tarn's response is, we haven't started converting adventure mode yet. I think that it's premature to say exactly how much we'll be able to manage before it crosses the point of being good enough for a release. It is a weird creature in a lot of ways, and a lot of things are broken about it. The next question comes in from El Stono, and they say, are there plans to merge or change useless and rarely used professions such as milker and shearer? I would like to protest and say neither of those are useless or rarely used. I use both of them all the time, come on. I know that you said changing them would destroy saves, but I wanted to know if a change like that is likely if old saves won't work in the Steam version anyway because of some other changes in the code. Are you going to rebalance prices? Wax crafts and mead, for instance, are very labor intensive, and pottery uses a lot of resources, but they are pretty much not worth the hassle compared to stone or metal crafts. Prepared meals, on the other hand, are an incredibly easy way to get rich, and I know that more work does not always equal a higher price in the real market, and perfect balancing of that would be a bit gamey, but honey and wax are very sought-after commodities in medieval times. Let's say a rancher profession replaces gelder, shearer, and milker, and the jobs, and that way we use them the same. So if a milking job started, no dwarf would do it. A dwarf with this skill would be more useful. That's my point. I also think that improving the job organization is not necessary, especially with the new system, but my example does not really matter. I'll just rephrase my question. Are there plans to change professions with the Steam release? And Tarn's response is, we don't have any plans to change professions aside from what we did to reorganize the stone ones a bit. You can set up a rancher work detail using the new system with these settings if you like, and then assign dwarves to it. I'm not sure if we need to break it up further, or offer more control on a per-job basis, though it gets a bit weird with the names and skills and such. I imagine we'll continue to see some updates as with the stone over time, but probably not another one before the release. The next question comes in from Tranquil River Giant, and they say, just curious, why the cull historical figures option in World Gen is so CPU intensive? Is it doing a simple check to see whether dead historical figures have led important lives? If not, flagging them for removal? Or does it just attempt to retcon their lives to be a bit more important? And Tarn's response is, yeah, it's a simple check, but the figures and events can be very numerous. I'm not sure if there are problems with it on top of that. Dick Butt is back with a double feature, and they say, Mr. Toad, question. Why is it the dwarves in World Gen are able to understand how cold an environment is, but not how hot it is? Meaning, they seem to avoid expanding when surrounded by temperatures of absolute zero, but will continue to expand into areas that are the equivalent of a very large number of degrees Fahrenheit. When I embark in these areas, I get a notification that my dwarves' eyeballs are melting and out of their heads, and my wagon has burst into flames. The rest of the Dwarf Civ doesn't seem to mind, though. Last one. If Dwarf Fortress could be played as a competitive real-time strategy game over LAN against a real human component, in which you share the same map, but fog of war, and the goal being to wipe out all of your opponent's dwarves, what would your strategy for winning the first game be? And how could you maximize the value of your starting deployment equipment? And how do you stop the madman who deploys 7 dwarves with maxed out mining and dodge, who is making a break for the circus, in an effort to flip a coin on who ends up losing first once the clowns arrive? And Tarn's response is, was this modding in the temperatures to extremes? Perhaps the cold check matches up with the biome stuff, so it happens to work out, but they considered ultra-high temperatures to be tropical still. And in regards to competitive RTS, I'm not good at this game. It seems like it would be tricky to find and stop the enemy dwarves in time with Fog of War active on the map of any size. Though they would be the closest to the demons at first, which makes it seem like trouble for them at least. Especially since max dodge for an embark dwarf isn't all that high. Question from Mr_Crabman, and they say, will it be possible to customize the text colors used in various places? And how will this be done? The new cyan text, as seen in the example in the recent Legends mode menu used for entities and civs, is okay to read in and of itself, but I find it really hard to distinguish it from the normal white text around it. And Tarn's response is, regarding your question in the replies in the premium version, I think changing colors.txt is pretty much restricted to text now, and all of the border elements are all in the graphical files, as well as the cursors and the other interface bits that would otherwise be subject to the 16 colors. You'll most likely be adjusting the colors there, just like the good old days. On to the next one. Question from Useless McMiner, and they say, why are wars fought over some issues more than others? For example, the devouring of bodies, tree or animal killing, and trophies. I've been testing warfare for a while, and it seems like certain ethics are more likely to trigger wars than others. The main thing that seems to be odd to me is slavery, which I'm guessing wars aren't fought over so that dwarves and humans are not constantly at war. Will this be in place forever, or will it be changed eventually? Also, will noble succession ever be cleaned up, in quotes, for the intrigue release, with actual pretenders to the throne and such? And Tarn's response is, yeah, it's only doing half of them, which makes sense, for stuff like assaults or vandalisms. Though those would be enough to start a war in the right situation. But it's pretty odd that slavery isn't on the list, given history. I don't recall human/dwarf fights being the reason it's excluded, though a decade out or whatever, it's probably hard to figure out. I'm not sure when I'll get to fix the noble claims. It would be nice to fix it for the intrigue release, but that release is crowded, so it's not possible to commit to it just yet. So to any of you who have been watching this for a little while, you might know that I get kind of annoyed with the super big multi-part questions because they're a pain to edit. Well, Mr_Crabman seems to have noticed that and has said, hold my beer, because here's a 10-parter. I will be doing them one at a time. Wish me luck. First part comes in from Mr_Crabman, and they say, a recent devlog says the most important event of the last 1000 is shown every second in the World Gen Legend Chronicles. What determines the importance of an event? And Tarn's response for question number 1 is, there was the available importance function sitting around, so I just used that. It is the one that decides what shows up in the event lists for each age currently released in the currently released version's Legends mode. It prefers rulers, mega beasts, and things like that. You can get a feel for it there, and there are too many events, etc., for me to scour the data list to easily post them here. The next question from Mr_Crabman is, can you move the cursor and camera around during World Gen now? It would be nice to be able to see during World Gen what places there are other than the Mischievous Hill and the Land of Funerals, and have some info about them. Yeah, you could always do that when paused or at the end, but now there's hover info too, which I'm actually very excited about. The hover info, being able to select things and see what kind of materials there are. That's absolutely amazing. Anyway, moving on. The next question is, from Mr_Crabman, of course, is, do the responsiveness changes or history readouts slow down during World Gen for any significant amount? I wonder if perhaps there is some threading going on there, since in principle it would be a lot easier to put UI or Legends browsing on a different thread to World Gen than it would be to have the usual threading suggestions, which would involve huge rewrites. And it would come with noteworthy potential benefits, like genning multiple worlds at a time. And Tarn's response is, nope, it doesn't change the speed noticeably, and it isn't multi-threaded. But there are a few timers that it doesn't, for instance, render too often. It is in some versions of the Rivers and Countdown where it can move slower than it needs to. Not surprising. No surprising new feature gains either. This one Tarn answers two at the same time, so I'm going to read the two questions and then his two answers. The first question is very simple. Of course, still Mr_Crabman, and he says, how much is left to be done before release? And I recall it being said that other OS compatibility would be investigated after the World Gen and Embarking was done, around the time when modding and Legends and Adventure and Arena and stuff were more looked at. Since we're in the midst now, is there any news on the Linux support front? And Tarn's responses for 4 and 5 is going to hold off on these, and Volleyball's question, since part of what we're doing is cooking up a public roadmap to take us to the finish line. I'm not sure when it'll be posted, and it might be some weeks, but it's one of the things that we're working on with KitFox right now. Question part 6 of 10 from Mr_Crabman, and they say, with the new modding system, is there, or will there be, a way to have settings and options for mods in the mod loading menu? Currently, it's possible to offer different versions of the mod, or make another mod modular, or make a mod modular. Just distribute the zip file on DFFT with multiple folders, or just files, inside of it, and tell people which folders or files to copy into the RAWs depending on the content they want. But on Steam, the workshop only allows one version of each mod to be hosted per mod, so there wouldn't really be a practical way to make mods have parts that can be enabled or disabled, or to have different versions of the same objects. Because uploading alternate mods to the workshop would get ugly in a hurry, polluting the workshop with many, many identical mods. That is useless, that is unless it's possible for modders to define some options viewable in-game, like labeled checkboxes that can enable different certain objects or groups of objects, or overwrite certain objects with alternative versions, or even enable or disable certain sections / raw tokens in some objects, so as to reduce duplication. Tarn's response is, we don't have this currently, but doing something like it would be possible. I know Factorio, for instance, has mod settings that you can do at startup or in-game, etc. But we don't have a nice scripted files in a widely adopted format, so it's a bit trickier for us to get at things like that, or do interface or for mods and API style mods generally. The mods subfolder question is similar right now. They use graphics and objects split, and the work the same way they do in the game currently, in the released version within the given mod folder. But it wouldn't be impossible to add additional structure in a way that doesn't break them later if I don't get to it now. But it isn't going to be as powerful as, example, Lua, nor can I easily switch to Lua. Question part 7 from Mr_Crabman is somewhat related to the last question. One thing that seems like it would be useful for mods is adding new content, example new creatures, to be able to support multiple different tile sets, at least the big and popular ones that many people would want, rather than just having only one set of sprites. Would there be some way of supporting this other than the somewhat clumsy solution of just posting supplementary mini graphics packs to the workshop and the options mentioned in question 6 wouldn't really be suited to this, because for save compatibility reasons, options could probably be only set when first creating a world, whereas graphics should be changeable during gameplay. And Tarn's response is, I'm not sure I've quite understood this one. If we have a big and popular tile set B and a default set A, then somebody makes a new creature and they'd provide pictures of it in both A and B styles. You can flip between them? This isn't supported right now, but it seems feasible enough as a startup setting anyway, or on a per load basis. Switching graphic sets would have to process a lot of textures, and I don't see it as something that would be happening on the fly exactly. The classic version is a special case since it uses a very limited set of characters which can remain in memory. It is at least the case now that saves don't retain any graphical information, so we shouldn't have any compatibility issues down the line if we do more here. Though, of course, that causes its own problems of needing all of the mods present in compatible versions to load the save. Modding, it's a complicated business, eh? Question part 8 of 10 from Mr_Crabman starts off as follows. How are the mods differentiated from each other for the purposes of listing dependencies? One could imagine two mods happening to use the same name, which could lead to confusion with when a player is deciding which mod they need to get, especially if they are mutually incompatible. And Tard's response is, we use identifiers for dependencies. I'm not sure how to avoid trouble if people use the same identifier. Since we don't ourselves control the central hub with links or anything like that. For instance, I don't know how much Workshop helps with that or enables chains of downloads, etc. If the modular if the modder provides some kind of workshop ID or page, bet our own system of dependency tracking has to work independently from the workshop. This makes it friendly since we don't have our own mod server. It shouldn't be too long before I finally get a chance to look at the workshop integration, and we'll see what more there is to say and if our own internal system changes to something that can capture both that and elsewhere. Integration may mean mods have 2 identifiers for all I know, which will be fun. Question part 9 of 10 from Mr. _Crabman starts as follows. About mod loading and overwriting, can raw text files in different mods share the same name and header text, such as creature_ocean, or would one overwrite the other? Obviously, actual objects' IDs can't be shared, and one has to override the other, but file names and headers seem like they should be able to have meaning in the context of the individual mod. And Tarn's response is, identical file names should be fine. Question 10 of 10 from Mr. _Crabman says, have any decisions been made on what's going to happen with the classic fort mode track now that it doesn't fit alongside the new ones? Is there some place for the Steam version, even if it's not fort or adventure mode? And Tarn's response says, I haven't decided yet. One of the ideas was Legends mode. Another was somewhere in the credits, and it's way too noisy to put alongside of the professional ones. We don't know more about this until the music is finalized. Kit Fox is still working on some stuff there. Just have it a toggle in the options menu. Come on, just do it. Just for the whole game, just classic music on. Ding! Classic music play, nonstop. Do it. You won't. Moving on. Finishing off this round of Future of the Fortress with a double feature question coming in from Mr. _Crabman and a Curious Cat, which Tarn answers both flawlessly at the same time, so I shall read them both and then Tarn's response. Mr. _Crabman, the main character of this episode, says, will it be possible for the scroll wheel to now do actual scrolling in menus? One thing I've noticed while trying to browse Legends currently is that you have to use the arrow keys to very slowly scroll up and down because using the scroll wheel zooms in and out instead. Actually, you can also use the page up and page down to go way faster, but whatever. Which maybe works in Fortress mode, but is pretty uncomfortable when trying to scroll through a long menu, which a lot of Legends mode screens are. What image and audio file types will be accepted by DF for the likes of graphics and sound packs, or has it not changed? And Curious Cat also asks, would it be possible to support tilt wheels for scrolling side to side? Also, would it be possible to support touchscreen gestures, such as pinch to zoom in with 2 fingers and scrolling on systems that have them? Like the Steam Deck. I mean, come on. Finally, I've noticed that it's impossible to show the entirety of an embark at the largest zoom level because of the part of the embark gets cut off by the black regions on the sides. Would it be possible to change this to allow a full embark to be seen? I'd kind of like to be able to get a screenshot of my full embark, but it's currently impossible? And Tarn's response is, scroll wheel being linked to active scroll bars isn't done yet, though it's on another short-term to-do list. There's some ambiguity. We'll need to decide if and how the cursor needs to be positioned sometimes. It's also competing with the Z levels. So for the in-play menus, it needs to be more tightly controlled wheel. I imagine pulling the scroll bar is faster. All of the Legends modes, which doesn't fit, do have scroll bars. Audio hasn't changed. I imagine Fmod is pretty versatile, so I haven't tried to do anything new or fancy yet, and probably won't start that until the music comes in from Kit Fox. Tilt wheels and touchscreen, I don't know. I don't have those input methods to tests. Theoretically, whatever SDL supports can be done. Somebody send him a Steam Deck. Moving on. Embark image. I don't think this will be possible in the existing version. There is an image export feature which produces effectively a screenshot of a Z-slice in which you could resize in any way you like, though maybe not what you wanted, though we haven't got that one done yet either. And that brings us to the end of probably the most editing-heavy Future of the Fortress video I've ever done. This is like... Man, I'm looking at the clock right now. It's probably around 4 hours of editing I've done on this video, so I just want to say thank you very much for watching these. I know I've had a lot of people say that this is actually their preferred method of paying attention to the Future of the Fortress stuff now, which I think is extremely flattering, but seriously, actually go just give the forum some views and go sign up for an account and ask questions over there because it does help them out. For some people who've been asking me, I'm planning on pestering Tarn after that roadmap comes out that he was talking about earlier in this Q&A. So that's about when we're going to aim to have Tarn back on the stream again to do another interview. And I just wanted to say, if you haven't yet, please go support Bay 12 Games on Patreon or directly through PayPal because, you know, that's what's funding them to get this game done, and it's going to take a while, and I'm going to be here talking about it as long as it takes. And I hope that you guys are enjoying the ride. If you want to support me directly, there's my patrons are on the screen right about now, and there's a link to my Patreon in the description. If you like the sound of my voice, I have a podcast with my stream team now. I'm hosting them, so I'm on every episode. There's a link in the description. And the last thing I wanted to mention is, if you're watching this right as it's going live, I'm probably streaming right now, so just click on that Twitch thing and come say hi. Thank you very much for watching this video. There's more Dwarf Fortress on this YouTube channel than you could reasonably watch in a lifetime, and I'll see you in the next one.